Hello everybody and welcome to today's BAInsights session. Today we'll be talking about the importance of reflection, and to help us with that conversation we've got two excellent guests to join us. So let's start with some introductions. Starting with yourself please, Vidhya.
Hi everyone, I'm Vidhya Shanmugam and I work as a lead business analyst in Network Rail. I've been in the public sector now in Network Rail for about 7 years. And previously I used to work for National Grid, so that's again like a semi-public sector. So, and I think I've been with BA for over 10 years now. So I worked in all business areas around HR, finance, and supply chain, customers. And now I'm working as a lead BA in the core renewables IT portfolio, which is a bit more technical upgrades and refreshes. I'm thoroughly enjoying the role and enjoy being a BA. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vidhya. And Marc?
Yeah, hello everyone. So my name's Marc Atkins, and I work for a company called Aveva, although it's not the insurance company, which is often the assumption most people make. But we're an industrial software company, so we help organizations be a lot more kind of sustainable in terms of how they use their resources and be more efficient and effective with that as well. So I've been the BA practice lead here for almost 3 years now. We have a team of 14 BAs working across all areas of the business. So we get an opportunity to work in a wide range of different projects and programs as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Vidhya, again. All right, so let's start with, before we start into the first question, I should remind people that are watching this, feel free to drop any comments if you want to, or likes and all that good stuff. But let's get into it. So the first question, Vidhya. So is it important to reflect as a BA? And if so, why is that, please?
Good question, John. I think it's very important, not just for a BA to have this reflection practice, but everybody. But I'm just going to say from a BA's point of view, I think it helps to improve your skill. So it actually is very important to analyze your process you follow, take one step at a time, understand how you've gone about doing either requirements gathering or managing a stakeholder. And sometimes when you're in a very busy environment, it becomes difficult. And that's the time pressures we have. But the reflection is important because it gives like an unbiased and a non-emotional view. So you're almost putting yourself outside your own shoes. Standing in, I'd like to view what would somebody else do if it was me in that position, if I had asked that question. So making yourself in a third person's view is very important, to have that unbiased opinion about what you did well, what you didn't do well, and improve. And it's as part of the continuous improvement and learning and growth mindset. You need that, because when you kind of think, okay, I've been 10 years, I'm a really good BA, and you can't always have that because there's always room for improvement. There's so many things that happen in your life that actually put you back straight in your, from the start, and you always, okay, there we go again, I'm actually starting from scratch. So you will always have those moments, and this is actually fun. Actually, this is why being a BA is great, because you don't have this daily operational view. Every project, every challenge you get is very different, and you always keep learning from that. So considering wide range of perspectives and options and having that growth mindset is, I think, very, very important for the BA practice.
Yeah, excellent points there, Vidhya, and it really does demonstrate that reflection is a good way to help improve yourself by taking a little bit of stock of how you're performing at every point. And I guess even at not just a grand level, but at a very detailed level as well. It could be as simple as taking a little bit of time to consider how a meeting went and how you might have been able to perform a little bit better or ask questions a little differently as well. So thank you for that. Marc, over to you, please.
So I think for me, it's very important. I think you can kind of get so caught up in what you're doing and just kind of reacting to what's happening on a day-to-day basis. But I guess we've all been in situations, sometimes where people kind of jump to the solution. They've kind of think they've found what it is that they need. So they've maybe kind of got the answer, but they're not so clear on what the question is. Or sometimes we kind of lose sight of what it is we're trying to achieve. Say, just in that kind of frenetic nature of everything. So having that time to kind of just take a step back, reflect at different points along the way and go, right, are we still on track? Is the goal or the outcome we're trying to achieve, is that still the right one? Has anything changed or evolved over time? And I guess I know it can be hard sometimes to find the time to do this, and maybe there's the pressure to kind of just keep doing and doing. But taking that time to reflect and think on what you're doing. Is it the right thing? Are we all aligned? Are we on the same page? Is the direction we're headed still the right one as well? It's really important to get to the right outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And just taking that time to just consider, organise your thoughts, and just think about what you've heard, what you haven't heard, what your next steps might be, how you're going to approach your next session or next meeting. It all needs, I think, a little bit of just introspection to just think about how you're going to tackle those things, which is really the point of reflection.
Yeah, and I guess even that people are, is everybody feeling the same? It's you can kind of hear what people are saying, but maybe sometimes it might be important. Well, what are people not saying as well? Is everybody in the room shared their kind of view, perspective, or opinion? Is there anybody that you might want to kind of draw in one way or another, whether that's kind of ask them on a bigger call or take the time to maybe go and meet them individually, just to see whether there's anything we've missed, or are you just happy and comfortable with what you've seen and heard the rest of us discuss maybe?
Yeah, and just stick with yourself, Mark, if I could. Can you describe your own process of reflection or your personal approach to reflection, and how you reflect, how you integrate that reflection into your wider day, really?
So I for me, obviously, I think it works in different ways for different people, but I often find writing things down helps me. I'll often make notes, whether that's maybe written. I use OneNote or Notepad sometimes, and often my notes maybe don't make a huge amount of sense, as in, it's just kind of frantically writing things down. But I think when you kind of then look back on them, it's going, right, do they provide the clarity that's needed? Have I clearly understood maybe what somebody was sharing with me? Because if I haven't, then there's maybe a bit of a gap there. So, obviously I'll try and reflect maybe there and then on the spot. But other times it's, I might come away thinking, right, I've got it. I really clearly understand this. But then go back to my notes and go, well, maybe I haven't. So there's some kind of gaps or some questions there maybe that I need to explore. You'll also kind of notice that I have a whiteboard behind me. So I often kind of get whatever's in my mind, just blurt it out on the page, and it, again, may not make a huge amount of sense, but, it's quite nice and easy with a whiteboard to go, well, I'll rub that bit off, I'll rephrase it, or I'll move that bit to there, etc. As well. So, yeah, for me, I'm quite a visual person. So the more I can kind of get stuff out and put it into what I think is a logical order, or identify that something's not logical or not working for whatever reason, that really helps me with my reflection. And again, to maybe go, well, what are the things not on here that possibly should be on here as well? But I think with lots of discussions, it's just kind of trying to take some time to reflect on, well, how did that discussion go? What did we cover? What was said? How was it said? Peer reviews as well. I think we kind of encourage peer reviews within the team. And I certainly have people peer review what I do to go, well, is what I've shared, does that make sense? It might make sense to me because I've got all of the background and knowledge, but is it going to make sense to other people? Or even just kind of sharing your thoughts or ideas. I think sometimes just having a chat, sometimes the other person doesn't even have to actually talk much. It might be just by you talking about it, it starts to make sense to you, as in, right, well, I've kind of come to it myself. I've reflected on it, or it's maybe just one or two questions that somebody's asked that allows you to think about a different perspective. So I think there's a lot of value in kind of sharing a particular challenge, scenario, issue, whatever it might be, and trying to get that other perspective on it as well. And it's, again, I think kind of in a fast-paced environment, it can be easy to sort of simply react and just do. I think there's a real art and discipline in kind of making sure you do carve out some time to reflect and think about what somebody said, did, or maybe something you said or did, and we've been working on as well.
What you described there, Mark, as well means that, by using, if it's visuals or your notes, it just shows the importance of having something to reflect on for some people, because you can't remember everything that's said or you've heard. But taking that little time to take a look at your notes or your mind map or your visuals gives you a chance to organise your thoughts or appreciate what you've heard or maybe what you haven't heard and you would have expected to just put you in that position where you can organise peer reviews if you want to share that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. There's no one right way of doing it. There's different approaches and different things will work for different people. I've probably described a few there that maybe work better for me, but it's still not one method that I'm using. It's a number of different things that may work better in different situations. Yeah,
makes sense. Vidhya, be your perspective on that same question.
Yeah, for me, just focusing on that question, there's a personal reflection practices. So, for me, I looked at this in general as well, not just as a BA, because I think what I tend to notice as well, the more I am better as a person in kind of being mindful and following through, the better BA I become. So it starts like what I've realized over the years is it's important for me to actually have that plan in place. Even though, because things will, you'll always have curveballs coming and hitting you in all directions when you start working. So it's just, now what I've tried to do is wake up a bit early and try to actually see what's actually in there in my schedule. So reflect on it. So if I have a huge stakeholder meeting, sponsors are going to be there and I need to present this, make sure if I'm prepared well for that and there's the questions I need to ask, the outcome I need to get, and have I sent the agenda? Things like that would be on my mind when I start the day, just to see if that's there. And also making sure that I don't waste, time is precious. Don't waste everybody else's time while going into a meeting. And that's quite important. And also any times when, obviously, conflict management, I try to reflect on, if during the meeting there's conflicts, how do I handle it? And also there may be some challenging questions that we need to ask at times. How do we, put it without being too blunt and, not making the other person angry. So all those things I try to focus, because sometimes what happens, there's cultural differences of the people in the room. Some people are from America, some people from the South Asia, so I think it's important to have that common language and have a good understanding of each other's cultures and actually try and be more simple when you try and speak. And sometimes throwing the jargons can be difficult. So I, for example, follow a practice where even if it's a very well understood abbreviation word, I always expand it. I always expand and put it in brackets. This is what it is. So things like that, I think over the years I've learned. And also what helps me when I'm having a very busy schedule is in my calendar, I book my focus time. It doesn't matter. I don't, because it's so easy to get swayed after meetings, and you don't have real time to see what was that about. After a while, you forget what you are there. And you kind of lose or your actions or things that you're supposed to take back or things that you're supposed to chase. So it's important for me, I don't continuously go and attend meetings unless it's really critical. At least for 2 or 3 times a week, I do have focus time and make sure when I have direct reports and make sure that I have a coaching time with them and give them the time so that I'm available and try and block their challenges or help them with any development questions or needs. So this is, and weekly, I think what is important for me is also how I have a spreadsheet where I do my highlights of this week. What are the challenges I encountered? Is it the same challenge? Because what I realize as well, if it's the same challenge, then we are following the same process and actually not getting anything. So is there a different creative solution I need to think of? Do I need to speak to somebody else? Do I need to take the best practice approach? And, all those things are quite important. So, I think being actually adopting all these reflective practices outside of the BA helps me as well. I do meditation, yoga, and that definitely calms me during when there's a lot going on in around your life.
That's it. And I mean, there's a number of things that you said there which are extremely valuable. But I guess for me, quite a few of them sort of like the ones that resonated the most, I think, is about, that last point, where you're sort of taking your behaviours as you as a person, if you're quite reflective, or you take time to be introspective on situations and take that into your work life as well. So I think that definitely works for me, in the same way. I think that point you made as well about, giving yourself space in your diary to reflect and between meetings as well, which is definitely a very important point, I find. And I tend to deliberately either try and put some times in there where I know, like, I might have had a series of meetings or some very important ones, to just deliberately put a bit of space in to give myself time to digest what I've just heard before I go into the next one as well. So them points, I think, especially resonated as you were talking. I think beyond that, I think things that I would add, and things that work for myself as well, I think just recognizing that need for reflection, I think, is important. And obviously, you've both mentioned it in different ways as well. And Vidhya, you just mentioned there as well that your reflection time isn't just limited to after all the activities are finished. You're almost reflecting as you prepare for an activity, and then you're reflecting again as you go through it. So I think that continual reflection is something I also do as well. I find that to give myself the best space to sort of try and digest what I've heard, it can be quite useful for me to just try and get some air and try and get away from the desk or go for a walk. And that's often where, just by taking myself away from the situation, it allows me to think about what have I just heard, and to organise it in a way where I can figure out what are the priorities of what I've just heard and what should I be doing as a result of it. So I find walking around and going for a walk can definitely help on that. The only flaw in that sometimes is that where I come up with a few good ideas and a few actions to take from it, I need somewhere to write it down. So that sort of.
I was going to say, sorry, John.
That's all right.
Sometimes I get those ideas in when I'm shower. So I'm like, I don't have a book handy to write. Oh God, I'm going to forget this. But that's very true. Like when you have so many problems over the week, and suddenly an idea happens when you're like in a very random spur of the moment, isn't it? It's just.
That's right.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I mean, I haven't yet. I don't recall necessarily having them in the shower and not being able to think beyond that. So, but normally it's like when I'm walking around and I can email myself, so that when I do get into work, I can see there's that note for me to remind me of that thought. But I suppose you could always carve it into the bar of soap video and leave it there for next time.
Yeah, I think I need to have the phone ready. Just record it.
That's it. We'll just call out as someone to take notes for you. But at least it just shows, these things, ideas can occur, and some reflection can occur at any point, not just straight after the sessions you have. Takes us probably on to a question around challenges, really. I mean, do you have, and I'll ask you this question first, Vidhya, in terms of any challenges that you find in actually allowing yourself to have that reflection, and if you do have any challenges, how you might overcome them? I
think for me, like the challenge I had was when I was new to the role and completely new to the portfolio that I was working in. So there's a lot of things that, and obviously sometimes you're thrown in the deep end. There is obviously support, but sometimes you don't have all the questions, and you kind of hesitate to ask questions because you can't, you're like, I don't want to be bothering that person all the time, or your manager all the time. So things like that can actually kind of self-doubt, could be a barrier, could be confidence. If you are low on confidence, or if you're unsure, it could be a barrier. And also, like, sometimes some people, I'm blessed with like a good team and everything, but toxic organization culture. Because where, I think people don't get recognized or valued or not respected. And where I think sometimes where people micromanage their reports, I think it could be very difficult for people because I think there is a fear-mongering techniques that some of the managers might follow that might not be suitable, and for people to reflect, and they're always trying to, they work in the space of fear, which doesn't make them very creative. And also, I think you need to have that courage to be a bit vulnerable and open to learning. And I think like what I did, even though I was new, I was a bit hesitant. I was then like with open arms. They all said like, doesn't matter, we're all there to support you. Doesn't matter how many questions are there. So if you are in that sort of space, and I think it will be good to like just be yourself and ask the questions and try and learn. And also sometimes where I noticed like I had to probably I won't understand everything when I'm in the meeting because it's very new. This is the first time I'm talking about like say being in the train organization. There's so many jargons, so many engineering things that get thrown at me, and then I just come back and sometimes I ask if I'm able to record, so those kind of things. So if you're in a meeting and nobody's recording, nobody's paying attention to your question, that can be a difficult one. So finding a supportive network and becoming self-aware of yourself, self-aware, and actually think about what are your general development needs. So giving that space can be helpful, but sometimes if you're constantly in either a negative environment or being overwhelmed with work where you haven't got a space to reflect, then that can be a barrier.
Yeah, I'd agree. Mark?
So I'd agree a lot with what Vidhya says there. Yeah, I think time is probably the hardest one to find. It can be a lot of meetings, a lot of work needed to produce for delivery as well. But I guess some things that kind of work for me, and it's not so that they can work for everybody, but I generally start a bit earlier. So I kind of typically start at 8, and most people kind of come online around 9. So that kind of gives me a nice hour's window. Doesn't mean that it's always there, but a nice window to kind of reflect upon maybe, well, what happened yesterday? What were the things that I took away from it? How does that kind of affect or inform my plan for today or anything, for the rest of the week? So I find that really helps because it is generally a quiet time where, I'm not getting pinged messages. People tend not to book meetings in during that time either. But then I guess another thing that I often do is kind of think about, well, what's the priority? So maybe, should I spend time reflecting on certain things and maybe not worry so much about others or not worry so much about them right now because it's not as pending or looming as some of the other things that I might need to be thinking on. And I think one of you mentioned it, kind of doing like an update. So we do a weekly update each week, and I think that's a nice opportunity. We kind of do this towards the end of the week to kind of just look back on, okay, well, what have we done and achieved this week? And sometimes you'll have achieved a lot more than maybe it seems or feels like you have. Other times, maybe you haven't, but I think there's sometimes cycles where some weeks can feel really productive. Other weeks maybe feel less productive, but it doesn't mean it's been any less busy. You've done a lot of work. So it's maybe been more about kind of setting yourself up for a really successful, productive week next week. And you've just laid the foundations and the groundwork. So I think it's important to sometimes notice that and not put yourself under too much undue pressure because you still may be aiming towards a really good outcome anyway. But yeah, I mean, after work, I typically try and take the dog for a walk, get some fresh air. So, that's often a nice, kind of get out of here, like you mentioned, John, get some fresh air, sunlight, or maybe moonlight, probably more likely over the coming months. But just, get out of work, switch off. I often put my headphones in and listen to some music. And I try not to think about work, but sometimes now and again, things will just come to my mind. And a bit like you, I send emails to myself. So if I do think of something, capture it there and then in the moment, send it to myself, and I'll pick it up in the morning. And dwelling on it too much. Yeah, no, so I'm glad I'm not just the only one on that one.
I was thinking that practice until now.
Who does this? But it's good to hear there's someone else.
Yeah, I mean, and you both covered most of the things that I would typically call out as well. I think for me, like I've obviously already mentioned that I try and put time in to try and reflect where I know I need to. I think a way that I've found that I can help that, because a big challenge is sometimes having back-to-back meetings throughout the day or a number of meetings throughout the day. Where do you find time to reflect? So, if I don't need the hour, I don't need a half-hour meeting, I will be happy to put a 15-minute meeting in, or a 50-minute or a 45-minute meeting to give myself or the other attendees a bit of time to to maybe go and have a cup of tea and have a reflect on what's just been said, and even sticking on the theme of cup of tea. I think sometimes just go and have that cup of tea, just take a little bit of time to just chill from what you're doing, take your mind off of the meeting, and I think things naturally seem to organise themselves as well, and probably to the point Mark made, seem to prioritise themselves as well if you give yourself enough time. But that's what I would say. But Mark, I mean, you mentioned as well, it should take us into the next question quite nicely around organising weekly meetings to try and help the team reflect. And I know in Agile, it's quite a regular and typical thing to try and put a retrospective, rather. Couldn't even say it properly there. A retrospective at the end of like our sprints or our iterations, which naturally gives the team time, hopefully, to reflect on what they've done. But how do you ensure, or in such retrospectives or meetings, Mark, that that there really is a sense of reflection, and really that reflection is effective?
So I think one of the things for me is, with those, you've got to create an environment where people feel safe to share, whatever it might be, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I guess we not necessarily just meant to be like a moaning session or anything like that, but they feel comfortable bringing something up, and that they can do that in a constructive manner, that they can maybe offer suggestions or solutions to some of the things being mentioned. Because I firmly believe that if we can't be honest in the feedback that we share and provide, then we'll never be able to move past certain issues. I've worked in an agile way, and I was always a big fan of the retrospective, because I like that it's the meeting, it's booked in, it's come in, and it's something that you then think of in an ongoing basis, and it's not too long from the last one that you had either. And I think it's also important to kind of maybe try and draw out, well, what are people thinking but maybe not saying as well. So, you've touched upon this, or I've heard some murmurings around that. Is there any kind of way to that? Like I say, encourage people to be constructive with the feedback that they provide and offer those suggestions. But then I think it's also really important to ensure that we follow up on this, as in, well, you said, we did. Because if we just talk about these things and nothing ever really happens, then really what's the point of talking about them in the first place? People will just see the meeting that you might have as we're going to spend an hour talking about a retrospective, and we know nothing's going to come off of the back of this. So then it devalues the purpose of that and doesn't really encourage the right behaviours. So for me, that's one of the things that is a key to it being effective is, right, you said, we heard, we listened, and we did. And that's not necessarily like me doing something. That might be as a team, or it might be providing some feedback or guidance to the member of the team to kind of take into what's coming up next for them or their next project as well. But for me, those things are really crucial and important. It's a safe environment, and then showing that there is action and progress coming off of the back of it to make it really meaningful.
Yeah, and when you say about a safe environment, Mark, as well, it also makes me think about just generally having that safe environment for reflection. I think it can be quite easy for people, perhaps they're relatively young in terms of experience of BAs, and they might think that is it right that they're taking like half an hour between meetings that is thinking time? When to the outside, to the untrained eye, that looks like they're not doing anything at all. When of course to those of us that have been through it probably appreciate that could be the most productive half an hour you spend that day.
Exactly. Everybody's different, so you can't kind of say, well, one approach is going to work for everybody. And it is sometimes nice to have these big meetings as a group and go, well, what's working? But other times it might be more appropriate to kind of talk to people on an individual level as well. Maybe they don't feel as confident in a group. Maybe if they're a bit more kind of junior in their experience, they don't want to put themselves out there, or feel that they might be saying something that they feel others might think would be a bit silly, which is more than not the case. It's kind of taking that individual approach, but showing that it is heard, it is listened to, and we're going to find a way forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Vidhya.
Yeah, I just have to say, I know we're talking about retrospectives. I'm just going to give a general feel because I don't work on agile-based environments. I work more of a waterfall because of the 10 infrastructure projects that we tend to work on seem to take, that approach. But I do understand because some of it's a more of a hybrid environment. So there will be development could be sprint, but the actual other process would still be waterfall. So but I absolutely agree with what Mark said. I think you all discussed about having the right environment to speak, and it's a psychologically safe environment is what we're trying to discuss there. And I think it can happen because we're working with so many different internal teams, and we have like different portfolios. Our IT operations are stakeholders, and then we have 2 or 3 suppliers who would come on board, and we have such a huge different interfaces amongst ourselves. So it's important that we all think that we are one team and actually have a common objective, and we need to be able to create a win-win situation for everybody. So rather than like pointing the fingers and the blame game, I think it's important when you have those sort of retrospectives and looking at the lessons learned, like we look at actually what things went well, what can we continue doing, and what should we stop doing, so that the stop, continue, start thing kind of thing would work on that. And also actually remember to celebrate things, even if it's a small milestone. If we achieved on time, just make sure that we call out people who have worked hard, who have delivered it. And also rather than I think people tend to challenge things, but not as much appreciate people. Even a small thank you or just be in the team meeting, just explaining what they did could be a great motivation for the team. So remembering to do that constantly, and also agree on following up on actions, because there's no point if you keep getting the same kind of challenge every week and nothing's been done about it. There needs to be a progress. So if there are blockers in the way, we need to work and try and unblock them, and just if not, escalate and use the right tools to get that resolved as quickly as possible, because that can be again demotivating, and this is where it leads to all those negative emotions on people.
Yeah, and it shows there that whether it's a retrospective or a similar meeting, it's an opportunity to almost help others reflect as well. It's not just time for you to reflect. It may be that, as an example, someone in the team did something particularly well over the last week or so that had a real good impact, and maybe they didn't call it out as something that did go well in the retrospective, but hopefully by someone else observing it and calling it out, it sort of demonstrates some of those good behaviours that we could all do with having reminded or benefiting from, really. I think perhaps that also can help with the situations, as Mark pointed out, where people are not, maybe some of them aren't too comfortable at first to share what went well, or maybe to theoretically brag about what they think went well and not so well, as it were. So maybe by a few of us taking that opportunity to observe others and to take a note of it, so that when we go into the retrospectives or when we go into meetings, or even just to pull a person aside afterwards, we can say, well done, or next time perhaps you could have thought about doing things a little bit differently, which is really the only point I had to say that is different from yourself. So I won't repeat what you've just said. It's a sort of we've talked about retrospectives, we obviously talked about reflection as well generally. And an outcome of that, and a theme of what we've been saying, is it's important, as long as you do something, you take some action, and you don't just talk about things and forget it. So I wondered, Vidhya, is there any particular way that you document or record those lessons learned, or that come from that your reflection or collective reflection, and how you play them in?
The good thing is we have a good structure in place within our company. So we do have a lessons learned archive that's shared with everybody across the board, so cross-functionally. So everyone has access to see that. Being the public sector, we are supposed to, maybe we allocated a 5-year plan for our project. So this is the funding you would get. But even in spite of that, we still have to go to the investment panel to say, this is what we are doing. This is how we are going to use the money. This is a project that we are working on. And for each of those, in order for the finance panel to approve our funding for that project, we still need to show that we have actually similar projects we need to pick up and say, we've learned all this, we've revisited this, we've had the meeting, we've discussed what went wrong last time, and we have mitigations in place, or we know what things in place that we can put in the plan so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again. So we have those like a good framework, I think, in terms of the lessons learned. And also, so after every project completes, and even like not just because it can take forever, but even in midway through, we have an opportunity to reach out feedback to all stakeholders, saying, is there anything that we could do? What went so well? What didn't go so well? Do we have a meeting and document the findings? And then as a sponsor, they will agree to discuss that, and the sponsor will head that meeting to say, okay, well, these are the actions we will take to address those gaps. Or if the things that go well, then we'll continue to do that. We need to make sure we share our best practices with other projects as well. So that's something I think I really was intrigued to see being done, documented well. But what can happen sometimes is there are things that, like, each project is unique, right? So it's very difficult, like what might go well for one project. If we use the same tactic, sometimes it might not work for you. So we need to be very when you're doing the project. So for example, they might say, oh, actually we use this technology or this framework to do it, and we use the supplier, and that actually helped us. But if we follow the same thing for a similar project, it might not go so well. So you have to be very discreet in terms of even applying the lessons learned, that you do what is right at that point in time, what in discussion with your own teams. So that's really, really important.
I must say, it's really nice to hear that you're taking the lessons learned seriously. So many times I don't see any evidence of that in some teams. So it's really good to hear. Mark.
So I think it's probably fair to say that maybe we're not quite as mature with the lessons learned as Vidhya and her organisation are. So it's not to say that we don't have them. We do record lessons learned. We have a formal log for this. We can obviously go back and refer to it. So it's not to say it doesn't happen at all, but it could certainly be better. As in, like, we've got a new project or a program. What have we done in this area that's similar before that maybe we could go and look at? We will have ad hoc discussions and sessions around this. We will. But something we're kind of looking to implement within the BA team is almost when a BA comes off of a project, is to kind of then share back within the team the lessons that they took from it. So to kind of provide some context so we get a bit of background knowledge and understanding. And this isn't meant to take a long period of time. It might only be like 20 to 30 minutes maybe at most. So quite sort of short, snappy, where conversations can obviously then happen beyond that if it's relevant. But where the BA kind of rolling off of the project would give that background and context, and then talk about, well, what did they take away from the project? What maybe could they have done better? What would have helped the project more? Are there any things that they're going to do and take forward? Or is there anything that maybe they need to share upwards? They need support from myself or others to look at something in a bit more detail. So that hopefully there will be a good kind of meaningful impact then of going, well, if there's anything that's relevant or similar situation or scenario occurring on a project that somebody's actively working on, could they kind of use the advice, guidance and hindsight from the BA rolling off of the project to help them? Like I say, might mean that there's another conversation beyond this kind of brief overview and presentation there and then as well. So we've got a bit of a ways to go maybe with the maturity. We've got the aspiration to do it. We want to do that as an entire function. But we're going to do a little bit within the team as well to hopefully bring the projects to life and learn as we go as well, so make it a bit more timely and relevant.
Yeah, and I would agree with the point around maturity as well. I mean, we're often on projects not as mature as what Vidhya outlined, but that said, I think we do it individually and as a team think about the the so what from some of the lessons that we learn. So for example, was the plan really set up in a way that for us to succeed? Were there some things that maybe we didn't need to do and we probably never need to do, or maybe we should have done, but we didn't plan for it. So it's a good opportunity to just revisit the high level BA plan, as it were, or like an opportunity to revisit the tools and the techniques that we've been using, or the templates that we've been using, just to make sure that if they weren't as effective as they could be, let's change them straight away so that next time they're ready and they're going to work a little bit better perhaps than they had before. But we also have other spaces as well where they're not necessarily templates or not necessarily artifacts, but by going into like a central space for the team and the BA community, where we can go in and start to capture information about maybe some new techniques that people might have come across, or a little bit more information, or some case studies, or some credentials, as we call them at Capco. So just a chance to take stock of what it was we did, what the challenge or the opportunity was, how we overcame it, and the benefit we provided, and think about some of the approaches as well, so that in the future, if someone else has got a similar project, we can call out that credential, or we can pull out that case study that applied to that situation, which can be quite useful.
It's interesting you say that. I was watching one of your insights thing on mentorship, John, and it came to light because a lot of things, some templates, some of the projects I do might need a lot of use cases or user stories. Some of them might need a different technique or tools. So some of them are high on non-functionals, especially with the core IT infrastructure projects. So I think we also try and put like what a good looks like, especially for like people starting who are new to the role. I think that's it provides really useful information, and which they can grasp soon and actually say, okay, I understand this is how it needs to be done, just as a model. And I think having those different case studies or variety of things and tools that we can apply for the BA is really good.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you, Vidhya, for two things. So firstly, for the plug for the mentoring video. So please, anyone who hasn't seen that, go and take a look at it. But secondly, for the nice way you've maneuvered us into the last question, which is really around advice to any BAs on the importance of reflection. So I guess as you've done such a good job of setting that one up for us, Vidhya, we should ask you, if you've got any other tips or advice for BAs in terms of reflection.
I think it's very essential. I think we shouldn't think of reflection as, oh, okay, actually, our feedback, even constructive feedback, oh, somebody's pointing out to me that I've done a mistake. It's more look at it as an opportunity to look at yourself objectively and learn from it. So I think that helps, and feedback is a really quick way to get those sort of inputs. And sometimes it cannot be. It may not all be good. So you got to develop that tough skin to actually handle every type of feedback, but actually look at it like, okay, maybe that's fair. Maybe I didn't ask all the right questions, or maybe I actually forgot about this area of stakeholders or something that I did. So that sort of thing, you got to look at it and try and improve. So it's a continuous improvement, and helps you learn from mistakes, and it focuses on your own self-development. So what you're doing is not only grow as in your career or profession of BA, you actually try to tend to use in your life as well. So that is what I find. It actually makes you a better person. So by actually exposing yourself and trying to be more vulnerable and learn from that, it becomes a good habit practice to improve overall your personal and professional life. It also takes you from being not just a good BA, you can become a great BA if you follow the reflective practices constantly, and it is a continuous improvement thing.
I very much like the way, Vidhya, over the course of this conversation, you've recognised the importance of bringing things from work into your personal life, and from your personal life into your work life as well. So that circle of reflection is very good and well appreciated. Thank you, Marc.
Yes, I think much like Vidhya, I think it's one of the most key ways of learning and growing. And that's why it's really important to carve time out for it wherever you can, to take that time to kind of sit back, reflect, and think on, how did something go? You're not going to get it right every time. A project isn't always going to go the way you would like it to, and there's lots of different reasons for why that might be, and a good number of those will be for things that are maybe beyond your control. But I think what's key is kind of using your experience to recognize the signs maybe when you've been here before, and you're only necessarily going to do that if you do take the time to reflect and go, hang on a minute, this feels familiar, sounds familiar, I'm recognizing some things here, and then kind of taking, well, what did I do last time, or what was the thing that I took away? Is it, well, if I had my time again in this situation, what would I have done differently? Maybe going back to the lessons learned logs, for example. So how can you forge a better path forward, essentially? So for me, that's why it's really valuable, and that's the advice I would give is just, it's not something you should, a nice to have. It's a must have time for reflection. It's not always going to be easy to find the time to do it, but let's carve out some time. So use focus time, book in specific sessions or meetings or whatever it might be, and whatever might work best for yourself, but also maybe for your team and those that you work with as well, because it is how you will find a better way forward and a better path to get to a better outcome as well.
Yeah, I would agree totally. And I think just to add a couple more points to the excellent ones you've already added, I would my advice to any new BAs or anyone that recognise they could do better in terms of reflection is really to firstly probably make your stakeholders and your colleagues aware that you are going to take a bit of time for reflection, and that's why you will insist on gaps at certain points in the day to absorb the information. I think that can avoid those situations sometimes where you end up with a whole day full of meetings and no chance to take a breather and to think. So that would be one part of my advice. And I think the second thing as well would be, there's always someone around us, always someone we're working with or a stakeholder we meet that is particularly good at something that we're not, or better than us at something. And that can be the same for reflection as well. We'll see and come across people that we know, are good at taking some information away, pondering upon it, reflecting upon it, digesting it, organising it, and then bringing it back. And I think, just observing those people and learning from them, or even, not being afraid, perhaps if we've got a good relationship, we'll go and ask them how they do it. And maybe it might help us reflect a little bit better as well. So they're the things that immediately occur. So that's the advice I would give to everybody. I think beyond that, I think my only other advice to people in terms of reflection is to, once you've watched this video and listened to the good advice from Vidhya and Marc, is to take a bit of a breather and to take time to digest it, and perhaps go and look at the mentorship video or one of the others that are available as well. All right, but that brings us to a close, I think, in terms of reflection. So I'd just like to close formally by thanking you both, Vidhya and Marc. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, and we look forward to seeing you again, hearing from you in the BA community, and of course, taking some time to reflect on what you both said as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marc.
Likewise.
Thank you. There we go.